Hello everyone! We have some very exciting features to show you today for the May 2017 update of the Power BI desktop. As always, we're going to start out with the reporting features. The first feature on our list is a new table visual preview. The last few months we've been working on our new matrix preview visual, which you may have already seen, that has a lot of great new features, and we got really good feedback on that visual. So we've now expanded it to the table as well. You'll be able to use many of the same great features the matrix has in our table visual. So let me show you that. I've already turned the preview feature switch on, and so now I see right next to the matrix preview icon, I also have a table preview icon in the visualizations pane. So when I add that to the canvas, I can use this just like the older table. I can add as many columns as I want here, so let's say category, manufacturer, and sales amount. And as I mentioned, this has all the same great features that the previous table had. I can sort on any column I want in whatever direction. I can resize. Same great features. But this also has the additional features of word wrap and cross-highlighting. So I can go into the formatting pane, and I can turn word wrapping on for both column headers and the values column. And so now you can see in this column that I've resized it enough that some of the rows are needing to word wrap into a second line. So this is a great feature whenever you need to worry about conserving space, and if you have any long text, you'll be able to put that on the table a lot better now. As mentioned, this table also lets you cross-highlight. So to demonstrate that, I'm going to very quickly add a visual to the canvas. So I'm going to show brand name and units. And if I wanted to see in this chart details about music, movies, and audiobooks for Southridge Video Manufacturer, I can click on that row, and now this chart is highlighted by those two values from the table. And so I can see the exact units for Southridge Video, music, movies, and audiobooks. Make sure to try this preview out and let us know if there's any other good features you want us to add to the table. The next feature is another improvement to table and matrix. We now support even more URL types in both our old table and matrix and the preview versions of these visuals as well. You'll be able to use, on top of the already supported HTTPS and HTTP links, you'll now also be able to use basically any URL you want to use. You can use mail to links, file, FTP, telnet, and news URLs. So for example, in this table, I have this column in my dataset called manufacturer email. And when I add it to the table, I can see all of the mail to links for the corresponding manufacturer. So if, for example, I had a question about a given category, I can just click on this link and launch Outlook, in my case, to send them an email. In the Power BI desktop, you'll see this dialog whenever you try to use a URL to launch an application, such as Outlook, just making sure that's what you want to do. In the web, so once you take this report and publish it, we just let the browser handle it. So assuming your browser's set up to handle opening mail to links or whatever URL you're using, you won't see this sort of notification. It's up to the browser at that point. But in the Power BI desktop, we'll pop this dialog, and then you can say allow, and it will just open up a email with that email address in the to line. For these types of URLs as well, just like the previously supported HTTP links, you can also use icons instead of the entire line. So if I go into the formatting pane and open up values and I turn on the URL icon option, instead of having to see the entire link right there in the table and take up a lot of room, I can just see this little mail icon letting me know this lets me send an email. If you want to take advantage of this feature, do make sure that the column that you are using to have the URL in, make sure that its data category is set as web URL so we know that's what you want to use it as a URL link. The next feature is some data label enhancements to Combo Chart. Over the last several releases, we've been really adding more and more functionality to our data labels for a lot of our charts, such as column and line charts, and now we're bringing similar enhancements to the combo chart. So if I go ahead and create a combo chart, and I add, let's say, order date to the axis, and sales amount to the columns, and let's say net satisfaction to the line. Now, whenever I go to turn data labels on, I'll see some new options in the formatting pane. I can change the orientation for the bar data labels, flip between horizontal and vertical. This makes it really easy to tell if the line and the bar are very close together, which data label is applying to which point. So I can do that. I can also, for the bars, I can also set the position, so I can move it to inside base and make it even easier to tell which is the bar data labels. Additionally, if, say that I was having a continuous axis here instead of a categorical, I can also control my label density. So I can go in here, and for both the bars and lines, I can say, okay, I want to show more data labels, and just slowly increase that density up. Or I could even go less if I don't want too many, just to mark like the highs and low points. And so these features just give you a little bit more control over what your data labels look like on your combo charts. Our next feature is an improvement to our date slicer. We now have the ability to, on top of giving start and end date ranges, you can also use relative dates. So this means you can do things like next 3 months, last 3 months, last 2 years, last 5 days, and as your data continues to refresh, those filters will continue to just apply the last 5 days. So this is a really useful feature whenever you have a lot of data streaming in every single day and you really only care about the latest data for the most part. So let me show you that. So I'm going to go and I'm going to give myself a little bit of room here first. And then I'm going to add a slicer and add order date to it. By default, it still gives me the range slider to pick between 2 dates, but I can go in and within all the options, I now have this new option called relative. And when I select that as an option, I now get these different drop downs to let me control what I want to set as my range. So I'm going to pick last, and then I'm going to put in, let's say, last 3, and in here you can pick days, weeks, months, years, or a calendar version of each of those. So I'm going to go with years, and automatically my data gets filtered to the last 3 years of data. You'll see you'll also get a restatement as part of the slicer, so it's incredibly clear what is the date range being shown. I want to also dig in a little bit deeper into what the difference between the years versus calendar years, months versus calendar months. If you want the last 3 years from, let's say, this given day, you pick years. Whereas if you want the last 3 completed calendar years, you pick calendars. So you see right now, as it's filtered to years, this is today's date, and I'm seeing the last 3 years from today's date. But I switch over to calendar, since 2017 is pretty new and isn't done yet, that date is not included here. So I'm only having the last 3 fully completed years in my filter now. One other feature that gives you a little bit more control over what's included is in the formatting pane. We give you an option under the date range card that lets you pick if you want to include today or not. So if you have data streaming in, say by the minute or hour or something like that, but you don't want to include that in your calculations because today's sales aren't done, you can go ahead and turn off include today, and then you will notice that today's date is no longer being included in the date range. So this gives you a whole lot more flexibility around filtering data on your reports. The last feature I'm going to mention for the reporting features is we've also added support for mail to links to text boxes as well. So if you want to, for example, let's say add a text box to your report, and in here, you want to give people someone they can contact. So if you have any questions, contact Amanda. And then you can actually go and add as the URL type, mail to Amanda at contoso.com. And now this link, just like the links in the table, will allow you to now open an email in Outlook to contact a person. So this is a really great feature if you want to add the ability to contact someone with extra information if a viewer has questions. Moving on to analytics features, my first feature I'm going to talk about is one we're very, very excited about. We now are giving you the ability to create report level measures for live connections to analysis services, tabular models, and Power BI service dataset connections as well. So whenever you are connecting live to these 2 types of data sources, you used to not be able to create any kind of new calculations. With this release, that is no longer true. You can create report level calculations. These will only exist within the report, but they work just like measures in imported models as well. So you'll be able to use IntelliSense, be able to use all the same kinds of supported DAX functions, and you'll be able to see the same great error messages if you're doing something wrong. And of course, when you publish them up to the service, they will flow up with the report and be able to be used in your web reports and tiles, just as you would expect from a measure. So let me show you this. I'm in a model that is live connected to AS Tabular. You can see down here the little message. And I want to not only see the total sales amount for each of these categories, I also want to see the average sales. So what I can do now is I can go to the Modeling tab and actually be able to select New Measure. And from here, I can go and type average and find sales amount. And as mentioned, you get the nice IntelliSense to help you write your calculations. And when I'm done, of course, give it a name, average sale. And this calculation was added to my report. And I can use it in a visual. And now I can see not only the total sales, but the average sale within each of those categories as well. And of course, I can format it just like any other measure. So I'm going to go ahead and convert this to UK currency as well, since that's what my sales is in. And so this opens up a whole new possibility whenever you are connecting to these reports. You can get so much more power from them, and you can create whatever calculation you want. So make sure to give this a try and let us know what you think. Next up, we have 2 new quick measures for you to try out, total for category and rolling average. You'll find these quick measures in the same dialog as all the others. So I'm going to go for units and pick quick measures. And under the total section, right next to running total, you'll find the total for category. We have 2 versions, one that will keep applying the filters that are being applied to your report, and one that will ignore any filters applied to your report. Total for category is good for calculating the totals across all values within a category. And this is really important to use whenever you are trying to do something like a percentage of a parent value. So you'll be able to really see the contributions towards a total. The other calculation we added is under the time intelligence. It's rolling average, and this lets you, for a value, be able to calculate the average over a number of periods before and after each individual date that you're plotting it on. So for example, for sum of units, I will add order date, and I want to look at it across a month before and a month after any given date. And when I hit OK, this automatically creates for me the DAX needed for this calculation and adds it to my field list. And now I'm going to use this on my chart. So let me just clean this up a little. I'm going to remove my filter, and I'm going to put this back to a column chart that is using the date hierarchy. And I'm now going to add both the units and the rolling average of the units as well. And I'm going to drill down to the month level. And so now you see for each individual point, I have both the units sold in that month and the rolling average of the units across each of the months, going back 1 month in the past and 1 month into the future. Quick measures make it a lot easier to do more advanced calculations without necessarily needing to know the DAX behind them. So make sure to try out both these new these new quick measures, and also any of the other quick measures we've previously released. The last feature in the analytics section is an updates to binning. We released binning quite a while ago, and with that release, you are able to tell us how big you wanted each bin to be, giving us a unit based off of whatever you're trying to bin, and we will automatically create the appropriate number of bins for you. With this release, we're giving you the option to instead give us the number of bins you want, and we will automatically create the correctly sized bins for that. So let me show you that in action. I'm going to take this table and move it out of the way. And I'm going to actually bin my sales amount so I can get a sense for how many sales are going on in each of the sales sizes. So we're going to go into sales, and I am going to pick new group. And you'll notice with this update we also improved the grouping dialog. We show you what the smallest value and the max value is within your data, and you'll see this option called bin type. So by default it's set to size of bins, and you can of course change that in bin size, but now you can also switch to number of bins. So by default we give you a suggestion for how many bins you should have and what the size of each bin is going to be. but you can of course go in and change that. So I'm going to say that I want 20 bins, and I'm going to hit OK. This new group shows up in my field list, and I can add it to the chart. So I'm going to add this to the report, and I have my bins on the axis, and I'm going to put net satisfaction on this chart as my value. And what this gives me is for each of my bins, I can see what the satisfaction is. So I can see from this chart generally, with a few exceptions, as my sale size goes up, so like the bigger the sale, the less satisfaction people tend to have with that order. And so this new binning option just gives you even more fine-grained control over how you create the bins. The next section is data connectivity features. With this month, we're adding yet another new connector, this time for Dynamics 365 for customer insights. If you want to connect to this source, you'll find it under Get Data, and then you'll be able to see under Online Options, Dynamics 365 for customer insights. So make sure to give this connector a try if you have data in this source. The second data connectivity feature we have is an update to combine files. We now give you the ability to reference first file as the example file instead of having to pick a specific file. So let me just show you that real quick. I'm going to go under Files, I'll pick Folder, and then from here I'm just going to browse to a folder where I know I have a bunch of Excel files. I'm going to hit OK. And then from here, I'm going to pick to combine and edit. And in the Combine Files dialog, you now see for example file, by default we put first file. You can of course go and pick a very specific file, but by default you'll be able to just pick whatever the first file is within that folder. So that means if the files within this folder change a lot and the file that you may not have a specific file that is always going to be there, you can pick first file to use, and then you don't have to worry about that file going missing later. The last section is query editing improvements. With this month, we're adding 2 new transformations. The first is the ability to extract text before, after, or between delimitators. So you'll be able to pick the specific delimitators you want to use and be able to extract any text from a column using these features. We've also updated the unpivot functionality with a new option called unpivot only selected columns. I'll show you both of those in action. So I'm going to go to my query editor, and first we'll see under the add column and extract, we have these 3 new options: text before a delimiter, text after delimiter, and text between a delimiter. So I'm going to pick text between. And in my case, I'm going to pick a slash. I know my date column has month, day, year, and I want just the day from this. And so I'm going to put the slash as my start and end delimiter. I'm going to hit OK. And now I see at the end of my query, I have this new column that's just my day value. So I was able to pull that specific value out of that the previous column. And of course, you can pick different delimitors. So if you have a text where something's a dash, and then the text you want, and then a period, you'll be able to select those 2 different delimitors and use those as well. The other new transformation we added was the new option under unpivot columns. So now we have unpivot columns, which will always unpivot all columns other than the ones that are not selected currently. So this means you'll pivot the ones you have selected, unpivot the ones that you have selected now, plus any new columns that may come in as you refresh data. The second option is unpivot other columns. This means that you will unpivot all columns except for the couple that you have selected. So again, as new columns come in, they will be unpivoted. Or unpivot, this is the new option, unpivot only the selected columns. So if you pick, say, 3 columns and unpivot those will always only be the columns that will be unpivoted. So even as new columns come in, only those original 3 you selected would be unpivoted, and those other ones, the new ones that are coming in, are left untouched. So if you know there's only 3 specific columns that you need unpivoted, and that's all that's ever going to need unpivoted in your dataset, you can now use this new option to do the unpivoting. So that's all for this month. Make sure to try out all of these great new features and give us any feedback you have on them, and also suggest what else you'd like to see in future updates of the Power BI desktop.